When they said you couldn't, that wasn't a verdict. It was a challenge. Every word of doubt, every smirk, every look that told you you're not good enough was energy. You've been looking at it the wrong way. They didn't curse you when they doubted you. They fueled you. Doubt is gasoline. It's lighter fluid for the fire in your chest. But too many of you have been letting it burn you instead of using it to light your way forward. When they said you couldn't, that was your invitation to prove that you can, not to sit in a corner and cry about it. You've got to flip the script. Every time someone tells you no, you should hear go. Every time they laugh, you should hear a starting pistol. Every limitation they try to place on you should become the spark that launches you into a higher gear. You don't get to greatness by being comfortable. You don't get to greatness by having everybody believe in you. The truth is, most of the people who tell you can't do something are just projecting their own limits on you. They couldn't do it, so they don't think you can either. They quit, so they want you to quit. They stopped believing, so they want you to stop believing. But you can't let their limitations become your reality. You have to look them in the eye and say, I hear you, but I'm going anyway. You have to take that doubt and treat it like jet fuel. You don't sip jet fuel. You burn it hot, fast, and with purpose. You take it and push harder, train longer, focus sharper. Some of you are waiting for applause before you move, but you need to understand that the biggest breakthroughs happen when no one is clapping. They're watching from the sidelines, whispering that you're wasting your time. They don't see the vision in your head, the fire in your gut. They don't see the hours you're putting in when everyone else is asleep. And you know what? They don't have to. Your job isn't to convince them before you win. Your job is to make the win undeniable. Stop wasting energy trying to explain yourself to people who have already decided not to believe in you. Let your results speak the language they understand. You don't have to argue with a hater when your actions are writing a story they can't erase. Every early morning, every late night, every sacrifice you make, that's a brick in the wall of proof you're building. And when that wall is high enough, they'll have no choice but to see it. But it doesn't happen if you fold the first time someone says you're not capable. Think about it. Every single person who's ever achieved something extraordinary had a long list of people saying they couldn't. Every world champion, every innovator, every groundbreaker had critics. The difference is they didn't take those words as facts. They took them as fuel. They didn't get bitter. They got better. They didn't say, I'll show you someday. They said, I'm showing you right now. The truth is, you don't rise in silence by accident. You rise in silence by making deliberate, disciplined choices every single day. That doubt they threw at you, you pick it up, you put it on your back, and you carry it through the miles. Every rep in the gym, every page you study, every skill you refine, it's all powered by the words they threw at you. They said you couldn't good. That means you're doing something worth noticing. That means you're on a path they're not brave enough to take. You have to start seeing their disbelief as proof you're on the right track. Average people will never understand extraordinary ambition. They'll tell you to slow down, to be realistic, to take the safe route. They'll tell you to lower your standards because they're uncomfortable with how high you've set them. But you don't lower your standards. You raise your effort. You raise your discipline. You raise your resilience. And the higher you go, the more their words turn from doubt to disbelief to awe. You've been given a gift every time someone underestimated you. That's your advantage. They're not watching closely. They're not preparing for what you're about to unleash. While they're sleeping on you, you're sharpening your skills, building your endurance, and stacking small wins that will one day add up to something they can't ignore. And when that day comes, you won't have to say a word. Your success will speak for itself in a language even your loudest critic understands. Undeniable results. So stop resenting the doubt. Start fueling your drive with it. Start looking at every insult, every dismissal, every moment they tried to put you down, and use it as another reason to get up earlier, stay up later, push past the pain, and demand more from yourself than they ever thought possible. The real question isn't what if they're right. The real question is what if they're wrong, and I'm capable of far more than even I believed. That's when you stop being limited by their vision and start being driven by your own. When you were born, there were no limits. Nobody told you how high you could go. Nobody told you what you couldn't do. Somewhere along the way, somebody drew lines for you. Somebody said, that's too much. Somebody said, that's impossible. And you believed them. You started living within their boundaries instead of your potential. Let me tell you something. Those limits aren't real. They're just somebody else's opinion, and opinions don't define destiny. When they tell you, stay in your lane, you've got to look them in the eyes and say, I built this road, I'll drive wherever I want. The world will try to hand you ceilings, but ceilings can be shattered. It will hand you walls, but walls can be climbed. It will hand you locked doors, but locks can be broken. Redefining limits means refusing to let the world decide what's possible for you. When they say you can't run that far, you run farther. When they say you can't lift that weight, you lift more. When they say you can't reach that level, you build a ladder they've never seen before. The problem is most people stop at the line because it's comfortable. They settle for what's expected instead of what's extraordinary. They've convinced themselves that the limits around them are fixed, but limits are only fixed for people who don't push back. The moment you decide to press forward, the moment you decide to test the edges, you'll realize the boundaries were made of paper, not steel. Every time you step beyond what you thought was possible, your new normal expands. You've got to get to a place where you're not just chasing the next goal. They become checkpoints, not destinations. When you break a limit, you don't just celebrate, you look for the next one to smash. That's what it means to redefine them. You're not trying to barely squeeze by. You're setting a new standard so high that the next generation looks at you and says, that's the baseline now. And understand this: redefining limits isn't about ego, it's about responsibility. If you have a gift, a talent, an ability, you owe it to yourself and to the people watching you to show them what's possible. Because when you show them that the ceiling can be raised, they stop accepting the one they've been handed. You're not just doing it for you, you're doing it for everyone who's been told you can't. When you redefine limits, you start to think differently. You stop asking, can I do it? And start asking, how can I make it happen? You stop looking for permission and start creating opportunities. You stop worrying about who doubts you and start focusing on proving yourself right. Because the moment you see yourself as limitless, the game changes. This is why you can't take their measurements of your potential seriously. They're measuring you with a broken ruler. They don't know your hunger. They don't know your grind. They don't know the sacrifices you've made in silence. They don't know how many nights you've stayed up working while they were sleeping. So when they set limits for you, understand, they're speaking from their experience, not yours. But there's a warning. When you start to break limits, you'll make people uncomfortable. You'll expose their lack of effort, their excuses, their laziness. They'll try harder to pull you back into their comfort zone. That's why you need to protect your vision. Don't expect applause when you push past expectations. Don't expect congratulations when you redefine the standard. Just know that every step you take beyond what they thought was possible, you're leaving a trail for someone else to follow. So don't just aim to break limits, aim to erase them, aim to make them irrelevant, because once you prove that the impossible is just a label, you'll live your life in a way that forces the world to rewrite the rules. The moment you decide you've had enough of being underestimated, everything changes. You stop playing small. You stop shrinking yourself to make other people comfortable. You stop waiting for the right time because you realize the right time is the moment you take action. The truth is, nobody is going to hand you permission to be great. Nobody is going to come knocking on your door saying, hey, it's your turn now. You have to take your turn. You have to step into the arena and claim your space, even if your voice shakes and your knees tremble. When they tell you you're not ready, that's when you have to move faster. When they tell you it's too risky, that's when you double down. Because here's the thing, every major breakthrough in history was made by someone who refused to accept the limits of the moment. The plane was impossible. The light bulb was impossible. The marathon under 2 hours was impossible. Until somebody decided they weren't going to wait for perfect conditions, they were going to create them. You have to be that person for your own life. Stop saying, "One day I'll try." One day isn't on the calendar. The only day you own is today. If you keep waiting until you feel ready, you'll be waiting forever. Readiness doesn't come first. Action does. Once you move, once you commit, once you decide, the readiness builds as you go. You don't need the full staircase. You just need the courage to take the first step, even if it's into the dark. And here's what they don't tell you. The moment you move, you change the entire equation. People will start to see you differently. Opportunities will open that you didn't even know existed. Doors you thought were locked will swing wide because you proved you were serious enough to knock, and knock hard. The act of moving forward is like lighting a signal fire. It lets the world know you're not playing anymore. But don't confuse movement with motion without purpose. You have to move with intention. You have to move knowing where you want to end up, even if the road twists and turns. Because there will be resistance, there will be setbacks, there will be moments you feel like turning back. That's when you remind yourself why you started. That's when you remember the people who said you couldn't. That's when you let their doubt become your fuel. You cannot afford to let hesitation write your story. Every time you pause too long, every time you second, guess yourself, you're giving your future away piece by piece. You have to act while the fire is still hot before fear cools it down. There will always be a reason to wait, money, time, resources, but those reasons will still be there a year from now, and so will the regret if you do nothing. So take the shot, make the call, launch the idea, step on the stage, hit publish, walk into the meeting. Do the thing that scares you most, because on the other side of that fear is the version of you that can't be ignored. The version of you that isn't asking for a seat at the table. They're building their own table. And once you step into that version of yourself, you'll never again look for someone else to hand you permission, because you'll realize you've had the authority all along. Every single person who ever made history had one thing in common. They refused to accept the label other people tried to stick on them. People will tell you, this is all you can do. This is who you are. This is where you belong. As if they've got the blueprint to your life. But here's the truth. They don't know you like you know you. They don't feel that fire that burns when you think about what you could be. They don't see the nights you stay up planning, the mornings you wake up before the sun because you've got a mission. If you let their words define you, you'll live in a box they built, not the life you dreamed. And that's the tragedy. Most people die in that box without ever testing how far they could go. But you're different. You've got something inside you that keeps whispering more. Even when you try to quiet it, it's there. That whisper is your potential, and it's not going away until you answer it. You've got to understand, breaking limits isn't about talent, it's about persistence. It's about getting up one more time when everything in you says stay down. It's about showing up on the days you feel invisible, unmotivated, and out of options. Those are the days that shape champions. Anyone can keep going when the path is smooth. But it's the people who keep walking through storms that end up at the summit. And I know it's tempting to think, when I get more money, I'll start. When I have more support, I'll move. But if you're waiting for the perfect resources before you start, you've already lost. Champions start with what they have and make it work. They build while they climb. They create their own momentum. And the people watching, they either join in or get left behind. The world is full of people who gave up right before they broke through. They'll tell you to slow down, be realistic, or lower your expectations. Not because you can't do it, but because they couldn't. They're speaking from their own limits, not yours. And if you're not careful, you'll start to believe them. But you've got to stand guard over your mind. You've got to protect your vision from anyone who doesn't see it. Because the truth is, the limits you think are holding you back aren't even real. Most of them live in your head, built from other people's opinions and your own past failures. But limits are illusions, and the moment you decide to push, to test, to go beyond what feels safe, You realize the wall in front of you was made of paper, not brick. So the next time they tell you you can't, smile and keep moving. Let your actions make the announcement. Let your results do the talking. And when you get to where they said you'd never go, you won't even have to say, "I told you so." Your victory will say it for you. You have to stop negotiating with your own excuses. Every time you sit there telling yourself, "I'm tired, it's too hard, I'll do it tomorrow," you're building walls around your own potential. The truth is, your excuses don't care about your future. They don't care about your dreams. They only care about keeping you comfortable right now. And comfort is the enemy of growth. You have to realize every second you waste in comfort, somebody else is out there working. Somebody else is putting in the reps, taking the shots, making the calls, while you're telling yourself you'll start later. And when you meet them years from now, they'll be living the life you wanted, not because they were more talented, but because they moved while you hesitated. If you're going to break every limit, you've got to declare war on hesitation. You've got to stop waiting for motivation to show up and start moving with discipline. Motivation is a spark, but discipline is the fire that burns long enough to carry you through the cold nights and hard days. When you build that discipline, you don't need to feel like it. You just do it. Rain, shine, tired, broke, busy. You show up, and here's the thing. Limits don't fall because you want them to. They fall because you hit them over and over and over again until they crack. Think about water dripping on stone. 1 drop won't do anything. 10 drops won't do much. But drip after drip, day after day, that water will cut through rock. That's how you've got to be with your grind, relentless. People will try to sell you shortcuts, quick fixes, overnight success. But those are traps. You can't skip the process and expect the results to last. Breaking limits means paying the full price, not the discounted version. You've got to sweat for it, sacrifice for it, fight for it, because the fight is what makes you strong enough to hold it when you get it. So don't just dream about going further, train for it. Don't just talk about breaking limits, hit them. And when your mind tells you to stop, when your body screams it's done, you look at that line in the sand and step over it anyway. Because on the other side of that line, there's a version of you who's been waiting your whole life to meet you. You have to remember, the limits you're facing aren't always out there in the world. They're in your head. The most dangerous limits are the ones you believe without even testing. You've been told, that's too hard, that's impossible, people like you don't make it there. And somewhere along the way, you started repeating those lines to yourself like they were facts. But here's the truth. They're just opinions. They're not laws. They're not carved in stone. They're just somebody else's ceiling, and you've been living under it. Every time you accept a limit without trying, you shrink your own life. You box yourself in, you take opportunities off the table before the world even has a chance to say yes. And when you do that enough times, you stop dreaming big, you stop reaching, you stop even imagining what's possible. And that's exactly how dreams die. But the moment you decide to challenge those thoughts, everything changes. When that voice says you can't, you test it. When it says you're not ready, you move anyway. You stop asking, can I? And you start proving, watch me. Every action you take against your doubts is a crack in the wall that's been keeping you small. You've got to be willing to feel uncomfortable, to be scared, to be unsure, and still step forward. That's where growth lies. Not in safety, not in certainty, but in those moments where you're not sure if you can make it, and then you do. And here's the part people don't tell you. Most of the limits you break won't even be visible to anyone else. They'll be small personal victories, speaking up when you usually stay quiet, trying again after failing last time, showing up early when no one expects you to. Those moments might not make headlines, but they stack up. They turn into strength, they turn into momentum, and eventually they turn into a life that no one thought you could have, including you.